Hello, everyone. As you can see by the title, this video is going to be a review of the Watchtower's annual meeting from last October in 2023. They just uploaded it to JW Broadcast Part 2 this month in January. So I'm going to play about 5-6 clips of it, only totaling about 6 minutes, and then I'm going to stop, make myself disappear and show you their clip, and then magically reappear here with comments, whatever comes to my mind. So let's have a listen here.
We'll now enjoy the first of 2 symposiums. Each speaker will introduce the next. So let's give our attention, please, to Brother Jeffrey Winder, who will consider the theme, How Does the Light Get Brighter?
In recent years, the annual meeting has been an occasion where clarified understanding of Bible truths, a new light, has been announced and explained. Of course, it's not at every annual meeting that this takes place, but when Jehovah makes something known, often it's at the annual meeting where it is announced.
Okay, well, it is interesting that over the past, 10, 12 years, the Watchtower has revealed new light. And this may come as a shock to many of you who, if you're just viewing this for the first time and may not be familiar with where I'm coming from, as they say, a lot of what is revealed as new light is a derivation or in response to something that I have presented to them. Some of it has been rather trivial, I would say. For example, years ago, I pointed out that the iron and clay feet of the image in the second chapter of Daniel must represent the Anglo-American dual world power. And the Watchtower had always said, well, this represents an indistinct, politically divided world. And then they came out with new light. I remember back, I think it was about 1998, I had written the Watchtower a number of letters based upon my research on the book of Joel. And 98 or 99, I can't remember, I called Bethel and asked to speak with a particular brother who was on the governing body. And he received my call, and we talked for a few minutes. And I explained to him that the Watchtower's explanation of Joel was wrong, that there's no way that the locusts represented Jehovah's Witnesses. For one thing, Jehovah destroys the locusts, right? He drives them into the sea. He saves them, saves his people from the locust onslaught. Well, he heard me up to a point and then shut me down and said, if Jehovah wants the governing body to know anything, he'll inform them directly. Well, I was a little taken back, but okay. Like I say, that was 98, 99. And then I published these things for the public in a book in 2005 and other articles on my website. And then a few years ago, new light on the book of Joel, right? And they were a little bit embarrassed because I pounded them hard on it publicly. And they said, well, okay, yeah, these locusts do not represent Jehovah's Witnesses. We thought so, but they never say we were wrong, but new light, and this is... But the interesting thing is, the book of Joel talks about the day of Jehovah several times. But their new light has now revealed the book of Joel has no relevancy for Jehovah's Witnesses in this time of the end. It all took place a long time ago when Babylon destroyed Jerusalem, even though the book of Joel never mentions Babylon. But yeah, so there's your new light. And I don't think this annual meeting is addressing any specific point that I have brought out previously. But overall, I'm challenging the governing body on many points, but not necessarily on the fact that they claim to be the faithful slave. But we'll get into that more. Let's go on with the next segment here.
Well, first of all, what do we know from the Scriptures? Let's look at 4 points. The first one is this: by what means does Jehovah reveal new light? Well, for that we can turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and read together 1 Corinthians 2, verse 10. For it is to us God has revealed them through his Spirit. For the Spirit searches into all things, even the deep things of God. So clearly, by what means does Jehovah reveal new light? It's by his Spirit. We recognize the key role that Jehovah's Spirit has in revealing the truth.
Well, I will give them no argument on that. But as I had pointed out, if their new light is based upon something that I had previously published, and their new light is a result of Holy Spirit working upon them, where did I get it? Huh? Must have been Holy Spirit, I would think. Let's consider point 2.
Point 2, to whom does Jehovah reveal clarified understanding? Well, for that, we can turn to the book of Matthew, chapter 24, and read together Matthew 24, verse 45. Who really is the faithful and discreet slave whom his master appointed over his domestics to give them their food at the proper time? So clearly Christ has appointed the faithful and discreet slave, and it is through this channel that Jehovah, through Christ, works to provide spiritual food.
First, this when you hear something repeated over and over and over again, and no one ever challenges it, you just accept it. Everyone else believes that it must be true, right? Well, Jesus did not appoint a faithful and discreet slave. Jesus worded it as a question: who really is the faithful and discreet slave whom his master appointed? So Jesus appoints a slave, it is true, to feed the domestics their food at the proper time. But will that slave be faithful to his assignment? So it's presumptuous for the watchtower, for the governing body, to claim they are faithful, because Jesus said, happy is that slave if his master, on arriving, finds him doing so. So there is to be an inspection. Well, the watchtower says that the inspector came back in 1914, the messenger of the covenant, and gave them a thumbs up, right? But that's not true. And even now, this is one of the other things that the watchtower used to say, that the master came and appointed the faithful slave over all of his belongings back in 1919. And I hammered them on that pretty well in the book Jehovah Himself Has Become King. Some of the opening chapters on the harvest and the judgment. And so, by the way, I sent copies of this book to every member of the governing body back then. And of course, some have passed away, some have been removed, and there are new members of the governing body who haven't been privy to that information necessarily. But I've sent them other things, brochures, what will the second coming of Christ mean for you, for example. So there is a day of judgment. And it's interesting, you will very rarely hear the Watchtower refer to the 12th chapter of Luke, where Jesus spoke in more detail about the faithful and discreet slave. He had warned his disciples, to be ready for his return, whether he delays and doesn't come in the first watch of the night or the second or the third. You better be dressed and waiting. And if not, well, there's going to be consequences. And then Peter said, "Are you saying this to us or to all?" And then Jesus said, "Who really is the faithful and discreet slave, whom his master appointed?" 2 appointments. The first one to feed the slave. Second one is a reward if one is found faithful. But if you go on that 12th chapter of Luke, Jesus said that the one who was put in charge more than usual will be demanded of him. So, okay, who's in charge of Jehovah's earthly organization? Well, Jesus gave another illustration that the slave who knew his master's will but did not do according to it will be beaten with many strokes. And Jesus said he would be put out into the outer darkness. The slave who did not know his master's will and so did things out of ignorance will be beaten with a few strokes. So, Christ has not come yet. And he has not determined who has been willfully disobedient and who has been disobedient out of ignorance. Either way, though, both slaves failed to do the master's will to some degree, and there will be a punishment meted out. That's something you will never, ever hear the Watchtower talk about, but it's in the Bible. And, well, I'm sure at some point they'll get the message. Right? Okay, well, let's go on with the next segment.
Number 4, at what rate does he reveal new light? Is it all at once like a dump truck, or is it metered out like a trickle? Well, the answer to that is found in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, in verse 18. Proverbs 4:18. But the path of the righteous is like the bright morning light that grows brighter and brighter until full daylight. So the Bible here uses the illustration of daylight. And what does that teach us? Well, the Watchtower said, these words aptly apply to the way in which Jehovah reveals his purpose to his people gradually. So just as daylight grows brighter and brighter gradually, a proper understanding of Bible truths comes gradually, as we need it and as we are able to absorb it and use it. And we appreciate that, don't we? It's easier on our eyes when literal light gets brighter gradually. And so it is with the understanding of Jehovah's purpose as well.
Well, let's get one thing straight here. This verse in Proverbs, the 4th chapter, is used all the time as if it were a prophecy explaining how truth will be revealed. And it's not. It's just a general principle. If you read the context, the proverb is contrasting a righteous person's life with a wicked person. And he says they stumble and they don't even know what it is that makes them stumble. So each one of us, as we follow the truth and develop Christian personality, it's like the light gets brighter for us individually. It's not talking about the revelation of Jehovah's grand purpose. There's another illustration that Jehovah employs in a prophecy, and that's in the 30th chapter of Isaiah. And speaking of the sun rising and gradually getting lighter and lighter, God employs another illustration here. And this is in verse 26. And the light of the full moon must become as the light of the glowing sun. And the very light of the glowing sun will become 7 times as much, like the light of 7 days, in the day that Jehovah binds up the breakdown of his people and heals even the severe wound resulting from the stroke by him. Wow. Now, Brother Winder gave this illustration, but we really appreciate the light getting brighter very gradually. It's easy on the eyes. Well, you'll have to use your imagination to envision a sun 7 times brighter, like the light of 7 days intensified in 1 day. Sort of reminds you of when Paul saw Jesus on the road to Damascus, right? Blew him off his feet, and it blinded him, didn't it? Well, what's going to cause this light 7 times brighter? It's going to be the revelation of Jesus, the manifestation of Jesus. The word that the Watchtower uses is manifestation, comes from a Greek word, epiphania. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's where the English word epiphany comes from. But that Greek word has the connotation of a bright appearance. In fact, some translations say the brightness of his coming. So this brightness is going to be a result of a visible parousia. If you're still in that 30th chapter, this blow that Jehovah is going to inflict and then heal, it's to correct his people because they're going the wrong way. And Jehovah will certainly give you people bread in the form of distress and water in the form of oppression. Verse 20. Yet your grand instructor will no longer hide himself, and your eyes must become eyes seeing your grand instructor. Well, who is the grand instructor? When Jesus was on the earth, they called him Rabbi. And he accepted that title. He says, I am your teacher, but what I teach is not my own. Well, the book of Isaiah also refers to Jesus as a mighty God, a wonderful counselor. These are titles he will have when he returns. So he will be Jehovah's grand instructor. And how will our eyes see him? As I've mentioned many, many, many times, the chosen ones will see Jesus. He will appear to them. It says your own ears will hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it, you people, in case you should go to the right or in case you should go to the left. The Watchtower says we hear God's voice behind us when we read the Bible, because it was written a long time ago in the past. No, because we can read the Bible and we can learn a lot from the Bible. God doesn't hide himself, right? But he has not allowed his people to understand certain things. No matter how many committee meetings the governing body has, they will never see this. Because Jehovah says he has blinded the prophets. He's covered the heads of his visionaries. There's going to be a revelation. God likes surprises. So when you hear a word behind you, it means you're going the wrong way. You have to turn around. You have to repent. You have to accept a new reality. And Jesus certainly coming to earth and revealing himself to certain pre-selected individuals will change everything. So much for the light getting brighter gradually over decades. Well, let's carry on here with Brother Winder.
Well, knowing this, then, we are not embarrassed about adjustments that are made, nor is an apology needed for not getting it exactly right previously. We understand this is how Jehovah operates. He reveals matters gradually when it is needed. And also, the governing body is neither inspired nor infallible, and so it can err in doctrinal matters or in organizational direction. The brothers do the best they can with what they have and what they understand at the time, but are happy if Jehovah sees fit to clarify matters, and then that can be shared with the brotherhood. And when that happens, we understand it's because it's Jehovah's time for that to happen, and we eagerly accept that.
Well, the governing body will never be ashamed or embarrassed or ever have to apologize for getting it wrong. Jehovah's teaching them everything and revealing it to them, so if they don't get it right, whose fault is it? It's Jehovah's fault. And in a way, that's true, because as I said, Jehovah has blinded their minds. So he takes responsibility for them not being able to discern what is stated in the scriptures. What a guy like me sitting at home with his laptop has understood. Well, I would invite the governing body and anyone who's interested to go to the 13th chapter of Zechariah. It has to do with the coming of Christ, of course, as nearly all the prophets do. And it says, in that day, this is Zechariah 13:1, there will come to be a well opened to the house of David and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for an abhorrent thing. So Jehovah is going to cleanse his people of their error, and part of this error has to do with false prophets being in their midst. The Apostle Peter warned us. He said, just as there were false prophets among the people, there will be false teachers among you. He's talking to anointed persons leading up to the revelation of Christ. So it must occur in that day, as the utterance of Jehovah, I will cut off the names of the idols and also the prophets and the spirit of uncleanness. So what about those who claim to be prophets, like the Watchtower does? Well, it must occur that in case a man should prophesy anymore, his father and mother, the ones who caused his birth, must also say to him, you will not live, because falsehood is what you have spoken in the name of Jehovah. So their father is Jehovah, their mother is the organization, right? And verse 4. Now keep in mind, he said, we'll never be embarrassed. We'll never apologize. It must occur in that day that the prophets will become ashamed, each one of his vision when he prophesies, and they will not wear an official garment of hair for the purpose of deceiving. And he will certainly say, I am no prophet. I'm a man cultivating the soil, because an earthling man himself acquired me from my youth on. And one must say to him, what are these wounds on your person between your hands? And he will have to say, those with which I was struck in the house of my intense lovers. Well, I just referred to the 12th chapter of Luke and Jesus coming with a lash and thrashing his slaves, even the one whom he is going to appoint over all his belongings. He's going to get whipped for his ignorance, for prophesying falsely, for misleading God's people. And what are those wounds? So he's going to have to deny that he is a prophet, because before he was acting as if he were. Jehovah's told us exclusively what is to come. Well, here's the deal. The Watchtower has said Jesus came in 1914. And all the things that happened, World War, the Spanish flu, all those things fulfilled the sign of Jesus' second coming. And they cannot be duplicated in the future. The sign of Jesus coming is as individual as a human fingerprint. No two are the same. And so these things cannot be replicated in the future. They've said there cannot be another world war, because if there is, it would be nuclear. And if it's nuclear, there would be no life left on Earth. Well, is it possible it could be a limited nuclear war? Didn't Jesus say that the tribulation will be so severe that if God did not cut it short, no flesh would be saved? What else could bring mankind to the brink of extinction but a nuclear war? The Watchtower says it can't happen. So it's going to happen. Obviously, there's going to be a war, a global war. We're on the verge of it now. People can see it. The Watchtower says it's not going to happen. So they're going to be humiliated and ashamed. And really the question is, how will they respond? How will we respond when this leading light, who will never mislead us, who's going to issue life-saving instructions, is suddenly silenced and discredited beyond repair? Well, I think we have one more segment here. Let's see if we can plow through this.
So this helps us to understand the process, understand how light gets brighter in modern times. And while it is interesting to us how our understanding is clarified, what really touches our heart is why it's clarified. Turn with me, please, to the book of Amos, chapter 3. And notice what Amos 3:7 says. For the sovereign Lord Jehovah will not do a thing unless he has revealed his confidential matter to his servants, the prophets. Doesn't that convey Jehovah's confidence in us?
Well, Amos was a prophet, and he was just a regular guy. He said he was an orchardist and a shepherd, and Jehovah selected him for what purpose? To go issue his denunciation to the leadership of Israel, the kings and the priests. And the establishment didn't want to hear it. They told Amos, go off, you can prophesy over there, but not here. This is the house of the grand king. And Amos said, no, I was told by Jehovah. So the gauntlet has been laid down. The Watchtower says there can be no global war. And I've pretty much put it out there as loudly and as forcibly as I can that there will be. And that Christ didn't come in 1914. He's coming, and his coming is imminent. So we'll see. One last segment, and this is really something.
We can be confident that Jehovah God our God will continue to loyally provide us with the direction and the understanding that we need. We will not be left without guidance, unsure where to go or what to do. We will not be left to stumble in the dark. We will not be left to stumble in the dark. We will not be left to stumble in the dark. We will not be left to stumble in the dark.
Well, that's a bold statement, isn't it? We will not be left to stumble in the dark. Well, they read from the 3rd chapter of Amos. Let's flip over a couple chapters. And keep in mind that Jehovah's Witnesses are expecting the day of Jehovah. They want it to come. Paradise, right? Well, let's read verse 18. Woe to those who are craving the day of Jehovah. What then will the day of Jehovah mean to you people? It will be darkness and no light. Verse 20. Will not the day of Jehovah be darkness and not light? And will it not have gloom and not brightness? I expected that nuclear mushroom clouds might have something to do with that darkness. Well, I've got one more verse that I would like to say in response to this this bold statement that we will not be left to stumble in the dark. This is the 59th chapter of Isaiah. And Isaiah, you know, the word Isaiah means the same as the word Jesus, only it's reversed. Jehovah saves, or salvation from Jehovah. But what am I looking for there? Yeah, verse 10. Isaiah is speaking for God's people when the day of Jehovah begins. And everything they expected is turned over. And verse 10, it says, we keep groping the wall just like blind men. Oh, wait a minute. I should back up one verse. That is why justice has come to be far off from us, and righteousness does not catch up with us. We're hoping for all these blessings of the kingdom. We keep hoping for light. But look, darkness, for brightness, but in continuous gloom. We kept walking. We keep groping for the wall just like blind men, and like those without eyes. We keep groping. We have stumbled at high noon, just as in the evening darkness. Among the stout ones, we are just like dead people. You have Jehovah's word on it. So I guess the light gets brighter for a few now, and we'll see going forward. That's about it.